meeting February 14th. It is 6:46. Next slide, Angel. Thank you. See. Okay, no one may speak until granted the floor. CB11 members, if you have a question about board business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. If you click the participants icon, the participants panel should appear and you should find the raise hand function there. If you still have technical difficulty, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty to the staff. Next slide. Board members, the chat function should not be used for CB11 business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us of any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. Please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. Members of the public, if you have a question or comment about the subjects on the agenda, please raise your hand through Zoom and wait to be recognized. Okay. This meeting is called to order at 6:47 p.m. Roll call.
Committee members, when I call your name, please answer present. Stephanie Arroyo.
Present.
April Autry is excused. Adem Brija. Devin Cronshaw.
Present.
Jewel Jones.
Present.
Marissa Mack. Giselle Malave.
Present.
Jennifer Meyer.
Present.
Jessica Morris.
Here.
Robert Perez. Eugene Rodriguez.
Present.
Vinny Torres. You have quorum.
Okay. The adoption of the agenda, if there are no objections, we can continue. Okay, hearing no objections, the agenda is adopted. I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to look at September and October meeting minutes. If you did not, we should give the committee some time to review it and we can vote on them for the next meeting, if that's okay. Next slide. Next slide, Angel. Thank you. Okay, announcements. On February 28th of this year, the New York City Comptroller Brad Lander is hosting the Economic Impact of Black Empowerment, a conversation on obstacles and opportunities to financial empowerment for Black New Yorkers and how the city of New York can open and strengthen pathways to prosperity. The event runs from 6 to 8 and will be held at 163 West 125th Street. You can RSVP at the Eventbrite link. Thank you. Next slide. I am sure that Marissa has some informational updates. If she does, when she logs on, she can share with us her committee chair report. Next is Carrie from Uptown Grand Central. Hi, Carrie. Is Carrie on? Yes, she is. I'll give her a few moments. Angel, should we give her a few moments or should we move on to union settlement?
You can move on and then just come back to her. I saw her on before. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So we will move on to union settlement. If there, I believe Michelle is here. Hi, Michelle, good evening.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Giselle. I just have a brief update. Last month, I spoke about our strategic plan and what we were doing and the whys and the different pillars. And this month, I just want to share. Angel, could I share my screen? I think this happened last time too. Could I email it to you?
Okay, yep.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
So. I just sent it. So I just want to share some upcoming events with you all. And I just want to go through them briefly while Angel shares the slide. For at our economic development events, we have the first one that's coming up is our visioning session. And basically that's just a collaborative process of us and other stakeholders in the community to try to hear from the community on what they want to see with our economic development plan at Union Settlement. And so we have it, I think March 25th at one of our locations. And it's basically, we invite all the community, come share what you want to see as far as district marketing, placemaking, small business development, and just general, their vision for the East Harlem community. Then we have a digital map that we did for the holiday season, which was sort of like the goal behind that was to bring awareness to all the great activities that our local institutions were having, like El Museo del Barrio, Museum of the City of New York, Uptown Grand Central, Union Settlement. And it's just to get the locals to stay, shop, and play, as well as visitors highlight the gems. So it's an electronic map where you can go and click on any of the icons, and you can see what's happening in the area from their institution.
So it's saying I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's saying I need access. I just requested it, so I need to get back then.
Oh, sorry about that.
All right.
It should be done. So the next thing is our meet and greets, where the goal here is to have some of our local businesses become suppliers to our larger institutions. And we focus on just building that relationship for longevity. So we invite those who purchase from our anchor institutions to come out to meet with our small businesses, usually at a local restaurant or a local bar. Can you, yes, so, yeah, to the meet and greets. And this usually changes locations, and it happens quarterly. And one, it builds the rapport between those who are buying from our local institutions and our small businesses, but it also gives the host a chance, marketing exposure for our local hosts. The next one is cash mobs, and this is, we focus on working with local faith organizations. And this is just another activity to highlight some of our small businesses. We usually mob a business, a group of us get together and we mob the business, we hang out for a little while. Next month or in April, our location will be Zapuera. So, I'll send all this information to Marissa, and she can share it with you guys in case any of you are interested in attending. East Harlem Nights, some of you may be familiar with it. This is seasonal, usually, the spring and the summer. And it's just a night of fun, festive activities. We usually have live music, food from our vendors. They sell their products or their food. And it's just a nice evening gathering to celebrate the summer and the community and our small businesses. So the next one, the crawls, and this is another way of just highlighting small businesses while building community. We host these crawls, usually like 3 restaurants. We pick a theme And then just a group of us go from restaurant to restaurant. Some of the board members participated in the last crawl we had in December. It's just a fun way to highlight our local restaurants and hang out with our neighbors. The trolley tours, that's similar to the meet and greets where we take the actual purchasers from the anchor institutions to the small businesses. It's just a little tour. We'll stop, hear from the business owner. If it's a food place, we let them sample some products, or if it's a retail shop, they can just share their story. And if they have any samples they want to give out, they can. But this is just a good way to make sure that those who are purchasing from our anchor institutions are aware of all of our small businesses. Our merchant meetings, we haven't had one since the pandemic started. So our first merchant meeting, we just want to convene a social where we're all just getting together, building rapport, supporting one another as we come out of the pandemic. The Economic Development Breakfast Forum, that's just to discuss the state of our local economy, provide some hope and inspiration on what we can do when we work together to build community wealth. That one we don't have a scheduled date for, but that should be maybe early next year. And then the rest is just some workshops, training workshops that we will be having with for our small businesses. And then the bottom is the tentative dates, but again, we'll share this with Marissa so she can share it with the committee. And that's it.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for the presentation. I do have 2 questions. So my first question is, it's not really, the first one is a comment. I like the fact that to expose the businesses to become, vendors, I want to say vendors for lack of a better word, for the bigger organizations. I ran into a precinct police officer the other day, and they had asked a question of what businesses in East Harlem were, I guess, payees by the city, so that when they do need caterings and stuff, they can go to the ones that are registered. And that was similar to what you said. So I think that would be a good way to help support our local businesses when the precincts need food, or the hospitals. And then my second question, will the Zoom meetings, will you have an option for Zoom when it comes to the merchant meetings?
We will. Yeah, they'll be virtual as well. In the past, we did, but actually before the pandemic, we had both in person and virtual.
Okay, thank you. I'll open up the floor to any questions that anyone may have for Michelle. Thank you again, Michelle. Okay, seeing no questions for Michelle, let me just double check one more time. Okay, I don't see any hands raised. If Carrie can come on, if not, we can move on to El Museo del Barrio. Hi, Chelsea.
Giselle?
Hi, Marissa.
Hi. I'm sorry. I heard the presentation, Michelle. This is Marissa. I'm on the phone. I'm having issues getting through, so I wasn't able to see it physically. But I wanted to say you guys have a lot going on. I'm actually looking forward to speaking with you further tomorrow afternoon. But I'm excited that you're back. I think the initiatives, I kind of came in on the middle. But I think the initiatives that you have are great, especially for businesses right now, connecting to other resources, even outside of the community, to kind of connect and bring them in. I'm very happy to hear that Sephora will be on the cash mob. And I remember the cash mob from before, even with the trolley and all of that. So happy that you guys are doing that. And, obviously we're here to support where we can. I'm looking forward to speaking with you further tomorrow. But thank you for presenting on what union settlement is doing with small businesses in the community.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't want to move on without letting Carrie or El Museo del Barrio present. Maybe we can just circle back once Carrie's on. Marissa, you mentioned she's at 125th Street today, so she's probably busy. Angel, is there anyone on from El Museo del Barrio besides Chelsea?
Harry is here.
Yeah, I think Carrie's on. I just texted her. I
Yeah,
indicated I hope
like
she
you
can
can see her
connect.
smiling and she's poking her finger at the screen and there's a green awning behind her and now she's laughing at my silly comments. She's right there.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
Okay, it's super loud out here, so I can hear approximately 5% of what everyone is saying. So I'm sure Michelle did a great job. I'm sure she presented about amazing things. I don't really know what she presented about, but I wanted to join the call just with we run a farmer's market on Wednesdays here at the plaza at 125th Street and Park Avenue. So usually I can join in a more full capacity on a day when it's not Wednesdays. But I just wanted to come on briefly, not give a full report, but many of you heard about the downtown revitalization initiative that has been granted to East Harlem. So I wanted to give everybody some context and some next steps. So New York State is divided into several different economic development regions, one of which is the 5 boroughs. And every year, each of these economic development regions gets to apply for a downtown revitalization initiative, which is $10 million. It can be spent on capital improvements, so things like public space improvements, comfort stations like the one behind me. It can be spent on signage, wayfinding, that sort of thing. There's a potential to do like a loan program for small business storefronts, but it's all capital improvements for $10 million. East Harlem has never gotten it before. And so this year, Uptown Grand Central was asked to put in an application by the borough president. Let me just stop there because there's a train. Can somebody nod if you can hear me? Like, is it too, it's okay? Okay, thanks, Steph. But let's give the train a second. We could also put in for sound improvements at the Metro North Station at 125th Street and Park Avenue. But so it's for capital improvements. East Harlem, we were asked to put in an application by the borough president because in the city, the borough presidents nominate the applications. So Borough President Mark Levine, we wrote the application and co-presented it with Mark's office to State Economic Committee. And then I mentioned this to the committee, I think sometime in the fall, and just like blew it off and was like, y'all, we're never going to get it. Don't even worry. Like, just this is a footnote because Community Board 11 did send a statement of support, which was really great. But I just was warning, I don't think we're going to get it. Then we got it. We got it in December. We got it, and so actually January. And so the governor came, that you guys might have seen about that. But so the next steps for that are the funding doesn't come to any one organization. It doesn't come to Uptown Grand Central. It doesn't go to the borough president's office. What happens is Mark Levine is going to convene a group of about 15 people, people that represent organizations that have a strong stake in specifically the East 125th Street corridor, Park Avenue, viaduct, are like the main areas of concentration. That committee over the next 9 months will be selecting projects. And so, as I mentioned, all of those projects need to be capital projects. So it could be that, there's a little funding to help some projects that are already underway. The Greenway is already happening up north, and there's a community board concern that there's no comfort station there, that people are going to get out to the river and not have any place to go to the bathroom. So that's one idea. But all the sound improvements at 125th Street and Park Avenue, that's another idea. So there will be a lot of ideas. Those ideas will be concentrated and then submitted to the state sometime in the fall. And then the state will select from those projects which ones are going to be actually funded. and then those projects get implemented over the course of the next 2 years. So I know I just threw a lot at you, but I just wanted to make sure everybody is clear on the process, because it's very exciting to be given $10 million. Strangely enough, $10 million does not go very far in the city of New York when it comes to capital improvements. The subway that's coming is $6 billion or more, and just to get electricity and new pavement in our plaza here, that was $5 million, just for context. So it will do some good stuff. We need to be careful with the money and make sure it goes to the most targeted projects that will really catalyze economic development. But anyway, that's enough for me. I'm gonna be quiet, and then if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Thank you for your presentation. I'll open up the floor for anyone who may have a question. Jessica Morris. Hi, Jessica.
Hi there, Giselle. Thanks very much. Carrie, thanks for outlining a little bit about the process, about how the collective decision-making and brainstorming around which projects might have the most bang for the buck as far as economic development is concerned, and the big picture with regard to ongoing efforts at that nexus point in the district. My question is, you outlined the process a bunch really thoroughly. What is the timeline for that process? Capital projects are notorious for taking 5 times as long as we originally are told they will, and imagine they would. Is there a use it or lose it frame on the dollars allocated? What is the sense of and how does that process integrate with overall public spending and budget allocations? Is it like a bonus? Is it like a whole separate tranche of navigating agency worlds to get dollars spent for X, Y, or Z project once that gets determined? Can you just outline a little bit what that process is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Timeline.
I'm in a trailer. I don't know if this is actually helping with the sound, but that's why I can't see. I'm here. But so the timeline for the implementation of the projects is 2 years after the fall. So the committee and the decisions making will be happening this spring, summer, fall. And then the state requests that the projects be things that can be implemented within 2 years. I don't think it's like use it or lose it. It's just more the sense of they don't want communities committing these dollars way far out in advance. They want communities to focus on economic needs that are happening now. Like, where can we put this money? Like, let's just inject this money into the community and have it work now. So that's the reason for the timeline. So like this money will not be used to, like, say, make improvements to any of the Second Avenue subway stations, right? Because that is not going to happen for 7 to 10 years, they say. So it wouldn't be something like that. It would be something where, and it's operated by the state. So like and I'm just using this as an example, nobody's decided anything yet, but if it was a conversation on the Greenway, the state group would, of course, have an interaction with Parks and EDC and make sure that fits in, because a lot of times the city agencies have projects that they want to fund. Like Parks would like to fund the conversation on the Greenway, they just don't have that funding. Or signage that would be integrated with DOT, but it's great because the money is government money and they have the power to make all the connections to implement the project. So we just have to choose projects that are ones that are like right on the tip of our tongue, things that we want to get done and that we just haven't had enough funding to do.
That's great. It's a quick win. That's amazing.
Carrie, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Hi, it's Marissa. Thank you
Hi.
for presenting. I'm so happy that you did this because I know there were questions around how we're going to be able to use the funds, what have you. Quick question for you. Is there a way to see everything that's been presented, and also too, in regards to the decision-making process, is there a way that we're kind of looking at it? So like, let's say if a project touches 5 different points within the community, that's something that the state is more likely to do than another project that's just like, okay, we're painting this building or something like that. Like, what do you know what the the criteria for picking projects that are of most importance for the community?
That's a great question. And in full disclosure, I don't completely know because the process hasn't started yet. But the state has done this a number of times. Most recently, it was done in Chinatown. So you might see the things recently about how Chinatown's going to get a new arch. That's because of the DRI. Chinatown actually got double the money. And the reason was because the program had gotten on pause for COVID. And so then they came back with double the amount, which arguably was very needed in Chinatown because they were really hit pretty hard by the pandemic. What I do know is that the way that we wrote the application, this is for you, for all y'all on the community board, is based on, I heavily based it on the statement of district needs. So Giselle, that's for you. But so I went through all of the statement of district needs from community board 11 and made sure that was incorporated heavily. So it was already not just stuff I was making up into the initial application. It was stuff that the community has vetted for many years and said, like, we as a community need these sort of things. That list is not comprehensive, nor is it conclusive. It was basically just to give an idea to the state of East Harlem is the community that is worthy and needs investment. And here are all the things that the community has said for many years that it needs. So that's the like, Marissa, I think this is the answer to your question. The starter list is basically the list of district needs and then just some other things that have kind of come up. And then the committee will work to decide what the projects will be. But I'm not actually sure about the full decision-making process. That's something that I'm going to learn too.
Okay, I know Marissa's still with us. She's probably on stuff, but thank you again, Carrie, and thank you so much for mentioning the statement of district needs. That's awesome. I'm happy to hear that. You put a smile on my face. All right, you be safe. Thank you. Okay. Let's see if there are no more questions for Carrie, we'll move on to El Museo del Barrio. Don't see anyone yet. We'll give her a couple of moments to log on. Next slide, Angel, please. Okay, so we have moved on to our discussions and presentations. And we have Francis Euros from NYPL for an informational update on the upcoming improvements to the Aguilar Library branch. Welcome, Francis.
Thank you so much, Giselle. I'm going to share my screen before I begin. Okay. Right. Thank you so much, everyone. My name is Frances Urros. I'm the manager for Government and Community Affairs at the New York Public Library. We're happy to be here tonight. We are providing an update and to present on the Aguilar renovation, which we're very excited about. Been a long time coming, and we know that the branch is very much in need of these upgrades, and we're confident that we'll be able to serve the East Harlem community with these upgrades. So I am joined tonight by my colleagues in the Capital team, and Webster, Senior Project Manager, Logan Verkamp, Project Manager, and of course, Valerie Garcia, Children's Librarian here at the Aguilar Library. So just an overview of our agenda. So we'll provide a overview of the library, a brief background on the history of the Aguilar branch. We'll dive into the project scope, construction timeline, and then we'll speak a little bit about the temporary services plan during the closure, and then we'll open it up for questions. So as you know, the library was founded in 1895. It's the largest library system in the country. It provides library services to New Yorkers in the Bronx, Manhattan, and Staten Island across 88 neighborhood branches, and 4 research libraries. Our mission, the library's goal, is to provide free access to books, knowledge, and education for all, regardless of socioeconomic background, birthplace, or beliefs. With the renovation of the Aguilar Library, we're really looking to create and impact positively the quality of life of East Harlem residents, and create a welcoming space for all to enjoy. With that, I'm going to hand it off to Anne.
Great. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. Okay. For those of you who don't know, Aguilar is a very old library on East 110th Street. It's a Carnegie library, which means that it's part of a group of libraries that were built all over the country, but also in New York, of course, that are the date from around the turn of the century. Aguilar, however, is one of the oldest libraries that is in our portfolio at New York Public Library. It's the first stage of its construction was in 1899, and it was expanded. It's actually almost doubled in size, I think, in 1905. And since that time, very little change has occurred to the library, which is something we're trying to address. Obviously, we want to make the library as conducive to our goals. So we decided in the Capitol Department that it was time to really look and see what we needed to do to bring this library up to a higher standard. It is a very monumental facade, which is pictured here, and it is comprised of 3 floors plus a basement and a mezzanine. Next slide, Francis. So we've been working for several years on this project. We have really enjoyed working with Mitchell Jergalo Architects, who have also worked on a number of the Carnegie libraries that are currently under construction. The construction manager was selected near the end of 2022, and they are Shawmut Design and Construction. And the project is being funded both with some private donor funds as well as grants from the state of New York. This image is one of a series that we're going to share with you that give you the sense of what the first floor is going to look like when we are finished. Next slide. So this is a view from the front of the existing Aguilar Library. It has very high ceilings. It's quite spacious, but it needed, as the more we looked at it, the more we saw improvements that we could make. So one of the very big needs that was articulated by the staff and the public was that we really needed to get a ADA compliant restroom on the first floor. So our project will include that. We also discovered there were a lot of complicated ways to move around in this building, which were not particularly easy to navigate. So we embarked on quite a number of changes to the circulation system. And then primarily below this level in the basement, we are tackling a number of infrastructure problems that needed to be addressed. The boiler has come to the end of its useful life. There are upgrades to the elevator that are needed, as well to the sprinkler electrical systems and the information technology infrastructure, which is so important in a modern library. Next, please. So this is a floor plan of the first floor, and the main features that we wanted to share with you, first of all, of course, is the restroom, which will be on the west side of the building. We're moving the service point, which is where you pick up your books and talk to the librarians if needed. That's going to be moved so that it doesn't impede circulation either up into the building or it just creates a much better flow on the first floor. The front of the first floor will be a reading room with a great big long table that's reminiscent of the long tables at the main library branch. And then there will be computers and workspaces in the rear. For the first time, we'll have a dedicated teen area, which is what you see in the sort of lavender color. And we'll have some improved staff offices at the back of the building. We've also highlighted a project that's being managed by the Department of Design and Construction, which has to do with the ADA ramp. And we'll speak a little bit about that, but the project is not being managed by our office. However, we're working with DDC to help them get started. Next slide. So these images are renderings of what the front and various spaces are going to look like. So this would be the big tables in the front of the building, and you're looking toward the street, more or less from the librarian's desk, or what we call the service point. Next slide. This is the computer area for the adults in the back of the first floor. Next. And this is a view taken from the teen area from a high level that sort of gives you a sense of the overall space. So what we are seeing is not only the teen space, but bits of the adult reading room and the stairway, which is going to be a little easier to find since we've moved it around a bit. That's on the far right side. Next, please. And the areas that we're working in the basement are shaded in blue and yellow. So the scope includes a lot of back of house functions, including the boiler, which I mentioned, and we're reconfiguring the electrical, sprinkler, and gas service rooms. The information technology closet, which is where all the servers live, has been expanded and improved, and we have some new spaces for our ESL and other programs, as well as a staff break room. The programs that we've always hosted in the basement are going to remain, but not really be changed. They'll be configured slightly to accommodate these new spaces. Next slide, please. Finally, I alluded to the fact that we needed to make a better pathway out of the building for public safety. And we're showing this to you. We're looking at the third floor to also highlight the fact that we'll be coming back to see you in regard to a landmarks preservation. So what you're looking at now is very much the state of the third floor as it is now, except that we're adding a new corridor. Next slide, please. Oops, yeah. And because we're doing that, it's necessary for us, because we are a New York City landmark, to show to landmarks the encroachment or the change that's being made on the roof. We believe that this is a really minor change and no one should really object, but because of their concern, we had to do a mock-up, and it's also necessary as part of their process for us to come to your land use committee in March prior to our presentation to landmarks. So that's why we're showing you this. Next slide. All right, so the good news is we're going to start this quite soon, or soon in construction scheduling terms. So we're organizing right now the bid. We received bids. We're organizing and choosing contractors to start construction in June. We believe we will be complete at the end of the fall of 2024 with an anticipated opening late in calendar year 2024. Next slide. And finally, we wanted to share a little bit about this project in the front of the building. The work is primarily to replace the existing ramp, which is in very poor repair, and it will be fully accessible. And there will be, of course, some impacts to the facade that are going to be minimal, but this pylon, for example, shows you that some work is needed, and that will be included as part of the ramp project. As I said previously, this is a New York City Department of Design and Construction sponsored project of about $1.5 million. And we will work with DDC to coordinate with our project. But at the moment, we do not have a confirmed schedule for when this work is going to start. Next slide. Okay, so that's the conclusion of my explanation, and I'll turn it back over to Frances and the rest of the team.
Thank you so much, Anne. I'm going to hand it off to Valerie, but before I do that, we just want to note that the library has restarted its temporary services working group to minimize service interruptions during long-term closures projects for our branches. So Valerie is going to provide and just kind of an outlook of what our temporary services will be during Aguilar's closure.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
I apologize for my raspy voice. I have a little bit of a cold. So the team at Aguilar, we have partnered with the East Harlem Family Enrichment Center. It's a new family enrichment center on 111th Street between Park and Madison. They are going to allow us to come in and have a small library with library books, where I will be inviting the neighborhood schools to come in and do class visits. During the class visits, I will register them for library cards, give them a story time or a book talk, and then they'll be able to borrow books that are from the library, check out books from the library. And this will go on until the end of the school year in June. We've also partnered with El Cataño Community Garden. That's the picture there of the garden, which is located right across the street from the library. We have a key to the garden, so we can go in whenever we feel we want to have a program. This program was this past summer, where we gave out free books to the neighborhood schools. This coming spring and summer, we plan to continue to have story time, arts and crafts, register patrons for library cards, and have special events there. We've set aside one particular day to do garden work, as long as the weather permits us in the garden. I will be continuing to visit the neighborhood schools. I have about 40 plus schools that we go out into the schools. That's the public, parochial, the high schools, the junior high schools, the nursery schools. So we go to the schools, register kids for library cards, have a story time, also introduce them to the library databases, introduce them to the library website. We also are going to be working with the Harlem Health Action Center, the one on 115th Street. We have scheduled evening family story time, and that happens once a month. And lastly, I have just been contacted by the Center for Puerto Rican Studies, and I will be offering every month a story time, family story time. I will still be at a local Harlem library working out of it, but mostly within East Harlem, visiting schools one day at the East Harlem Family Center one day, and at some of the schools one day.
Thank you so much, Valerie.
Thank you.
Yeah, and with that, we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you so much, Francis, and Valerie, and Anne for presenting. I do have one question. The teen center, is it also like children friendly, or is this facility more geared towards like the adults and teens?
So so it's going to be a teen area, but we'll also have dedicated spaces for children and adults.
Okay, that's great. That's great. That's good to hear. I'm not sure if I will yield first to Marissa. I don't see her hand or her phone, but I know that she's not able to raise her hand. So if Marissa, if you have any questions before we open it up to the floor. Okay, no. All right. Jessica.
Thank you, Giselle. Thank you, team from the Aguilar branch and the New York Public Library. Carnegie libraries are like the scale of libraries that you can hug. They're neighborhood scale points of access that we understand as vital places where people are able to access that safe place and peace of mind that libraries provide. I just want to I have a couple of suggestions, and I know you're hard at work, and Valerie, hearing how dedicated you are to making sure that the points of access and service points and boots on the ground work will continue to happen while the physical place that people rely on so much is inaccessible, I think is commendable. That being said, I know there was an unplanned closure this fall that I was up close to the door and there wasn't really a sign, but it turns out there was an emergency shutdown that happened. So I think, where you're gearing up for a longer project, there's more opportunity to make sure that signage and communication about where community members can access either the pop-up library across the street in the garden is an incredible resource, or also other touch points, 96 or 125th. It's remarkable that our three libraries are all on they're north facing, the three of them, which I think is a curious condition. And I'm wondering about 110th Street particularly is it's the scale of the street is a friendly place where if people don't know they're looking for a library, they're not going to find it because it's inconspicuous, and I think that's perhaps an opportunity to consider how to in your old landmarkness still be inviting. And I know that the work will have something to do there. My question is about acoustics on the inside. I know that first floor mezzanine high space is challenging. I trust you've worked with the MGA team to really consider the acoustical landscape of the renovation. Is that
Yes, there are some things we are doing to improve the acoustics. That being said, I do want to say that it's in the nature of the space because it's high, to be a little challenging, but we are going to make some improvements by putting certain acoustical materials on the walls to try to lessen the echoing and the other concerns. And I also wanted to follow up. I didn't understand the question about the children's versus the teen space. I didn't realize we're talking about our library. But I just wanted to point out that this project is primarily a renovation of the first floor, which was where the teens were being housed. We have an entire second floor that's dedicated to children. So that will remain, and it was renovated not too terribly long ago, so it didn't need the kind of work that the first floor needed. So I hope, Jessica, that answered your question. We're aware of the acoustical issues in that room, and we are trying to improve them.
And embedded in the first part of the question was a question about signage and communication with regard to the closure and finding points of access. It's very difficult to be clear and make sure that people know where to turn and when to adjust their habits of points of access. So
to answer that, Jessica, we will be communicating with patrons via email on our website and putting signage up on the at the branch to point patrons to nearest open branches. So we'll make sure that that information goes out, and we'll also connect with our elected officials to make sure that they're aware and that they can share with constituents as well.
Okay, and just in that's a follow-up from an emergency closure that happened in the fall. That happened without any communication. It took a couple of weeks to understand what was going on and where to reroute holds and other points of access. I'm sure it wasn't just me. So it's good to hear that that's a part of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. So before, I just want to make one last suggestion or comment. We always look to partner in terms of the cultural aspect of the community. We have a lot of artists and people who can contribute artwork and their pieces of art and stuff like that. So if there's a way for us to come together and collaborate with the arts part of this community, there's a lot that this community can offer. So if there's a space for that to be able to be worked out in some way, please let us know. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Giselle. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, moving on to our slide. Thank you, Angel. Okay, our next, I'm sorry, go ahead. Who was speaking?
Oh, I made a mistake. I'm sorry.
No worries. Hi, Violet. Next, we have a request for a letter of support for the Africa Center's application for discretionary funding from Councilmember Kristen Richardson Jordan. And we have Violet Moss here on behalf of the Africa Center.
So I just wanted to let you know that I am not presenting. It's Uza, and he's going to join. So if you could give him a second to log on, that'd be great. He's the president and the CEO.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, so he'll be on in a few seconds. He's also teaching a class tonight, I think. So I just notified him. You could bear with me 1 second.
Hi, forgive me for, sorry, I was on mute.
Okay. Great.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Uza Iwala, and I'm the CEO of the Africa Center. And do I have the ability to share my screen with you all?
You do
Hello?
now.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So good evening, everyone. My name is Uzai Wala, and it's great to be able to present with you again. I think you've all also met my colleague, Dr. Chinio Gunro, who is our COO of the Africa Center. So just wanted to introduce her. She's on the call. And what we wanted to do today was just take you through a quick presentation about the Africa Center and where we are right now, to ask for your support in the form of a letter as we navigate the funding process from the city council and the borough president as well. So context for this is we met with council member Kristen Jordan, who asked us to make this presentation to show and share with you, and also then ask for community support as we go back to her to complete her funding process. So again, just to set context, if that's okay, I'll move on to the next slide just to take you through. Some of this, I think some of you have seen a little bit of it before, but this is more specifically related to what we're doing at the Africa Center and why we are requesting support from the city at this time. So, I'll just take you here. So the Africa Center is considering a capital campaign. And of course, one of the aspects of this is presenting to the city and asking for funds from various segments of the city government. So whether it's the Department of Cultural Affairs or the City Council or the Manhattan Borough President's Office. And so why are we doing this now? Well, first and foremost, we want to be able to continue to deliver exhibitions, programs for the community, for our immediate community, for wider New York, and of course, to bring a taste of New York to the wider world. So that's one aspect. And, obviously, as we have been operating over the last few years, we're recognizing that we need more space within the space that we have. The second thing here is also, of course, that the Africa Center is a singular thing. There are not any other organizations in New York that are directly focused on Africa and its diaspora and diaspora communities. And so we think that being able to finish this building and also create that home for diaspora communities, create that sense of community, as well as that platform for people from the diaspora right in our neighborhood in Harlem, I think that's a really important thing for us to do. So I just wanted to show a bit of the progress. As you walk by, you'll see the building. These are pictures from about 5 years ago when it was just concrete, essentially the core. And what we've been able to do with certain spaces in the building is actually turn it into a really vibrant space, a place for community, a place for programs for kids, right, for readings, a place for dialogue around things that are really important to us, the future of food. You all would have been familiar with the exhibition that we did, African/American, or the current exhibition that's on right now, that is States of Becoming. Again, these exhibitions directly address diaspora-related things and issues that are important to us as an institution, that are important to our community, that are important to connecting New York City and Africa, and really creating a thriving hub for that right here, in Harlem. Again, I just want to show you how the space has been transformed over the years and what people have used the space for over the last few years. Again, you can see whether it's big convenings where we've had lots of people in the space, to wonderful kids from the community, to musical performances, again, for adults, for children. The space has been used and we've learned how to use the space. And as we move into the wider space, we'll be able to do that on a larger scale if we're able to complete it, again, with funding. So just to give you a snapshot of what we've been able to do from 2018 to present, we've really put a lot of energy in creating programming. That's programming for the community, programming for folks who are really interested in the continent of Africa. We've had close to 100,000 people attend across all of the public programs that we've done, that's online and in person. We've had people, close to 150,000 people attend different exhibitions and installations over the course of the last 5 years. And of course, we've been growing a presence, right? A real social media presence to spread who we are and bring people to the institution from around the world. And, it's worked, right? We've had people hear about us, whether it's in an article or whatever, and come in and be like, oh, this place is here. I'm really excited to see what's happening. And then of course, on the funding side, we've been able to bring in funding that allowed us to build out those smaller spaces within the institution and also run some of these programs. If I move to the next slide, just to give you an overview of what it is that we're doing. So the Africa Center is really about creating a united African diaspora with the power to shape a vision for Africa's future that's led by the influence of African ideas, people, and values towards creating a more inclusive and equitable world. And that starts at home and broadens out into the wider world. And when I say at home, I mean at home in Harlem. And when we talk about our mission, we produce programs, exhibitions, convenings, and research related to African culture, business, and policy that champion new narratives about the continent and redefine an understanding of its possibilities and encourage collaboration towards shaping a vision of the continent's future. Now, if we drill down one level, just to be very more specific, we're really looking at 5 areas of focus. So diaspora, again, that brings us really close and roots us in where we are in Harlem in our community. Media and representation, how do people speak about Africans as diaspora people and the continent as a whole? Of course, how do we celebrate arts, culture, and creativity? And then, of course, other areas such as climate and habitable spaces and technology for humanity. These are issues that affect the whole world. As you guys all know, we're in New York on a 60-something degree day in the middle of February. So I don't need to tell you that climate's important. It's important all around the world, and it's something that we think that we can make a pillar of what we do that will draw people to the center and also allow us to project outward from our home here in Harlem. To just give you some thoughts about people are paying attention to the Africa Center. So we're getting, with each passing year, with the more programs we do, people coming to the area, coming to the institution, passing through, checking us out. It's growing. The presence of the institution is growing. Yes, we have these small spaces. The more space we have, if we're able to raise that funding and build it out, the more we'll be able to draw people to the institution, to the area, and again, create that vibrancy around the building and in our community. Again, just to give you some more articles about whether it's installations, exhibitions, or news about the center. Now, that's all just to show you and to say what we've done till present, right? So, proven the need for the Africa Center and proven interest in the Africa Center is one thing that we've done. We've also proven the ability to deliver programs across all of these areas that draw in the community, that draw people to the community, and really put this institution, generate a presence for it. Where we are now as we enter into this new phase is really thinking about funding to expand this building and the programming that we've been able to do over the last couple of years and draw people to the Africa Center as an institution, draw people to our community here in Harlem. So what does that look like? Well, to complete the building, that's $85 million that we need to raise, that we need to bring in. And that's broken down into really 4, I guess, different areas. So the atrium, that's this grand atrium, and I'll show you slides of this in a second. The south wing, which you can see here on the south side of the building, and then the north wing, and then of course the plaza itself, creating that outdoor space as a vibrant space for people to gather, both whether they're inside the building or outside the building. As it breaks down the atrium, just to give you a sense of what that's going to look like, this would be open to the public, as the whole building is, but this in particular, it's a place to draw the public in. It can be double as an exhibition hall, it can double as a community use space, it can double as a concert hall. It's got these majestic ceilings. It's a place for art, creativity, gathering, communion. We could do things like markets inside this space. So as we're doing with the whole Africa Center, as some of you have heard before, we're trying to design spaces that are versatile in their function and that are inviting in their function, that draw people in and say, this is, again, a home, but that at the same time allow us to platform many different aspects of who we are as diaspora people, as creative people, that again also will draw folks to the Africa Center. The south wing, if you think about that again in the first slide, I'll just go back here quickly. That's this area right here on the south side of the building. that will be where we do on the second floor art exhibitions. And again, that space is versatile enough that it can be used for that, or it could be changed in the galleries to accommodate many different kinds of productions, from art exhibitions to trade shows to community events. That's one of the things that's key. And then of course on the upper floors, we would have sort of boardrooms or classrooms that could be used for many different functions. On the north wing, we would like to put in a learning lab, essentially like this maker space, classroom space that would be great for educational opportunities or educational programming. Already we've done some of this with younger kids around that have come into some of the exhibitions, making art in relation to some of the stuff that's up on the walls, discussions, readings. But with that maker space on that north wing, that's one of the things we want to situate there. And then of course, the terrace, the outdoor terrace on the top floor that overlooks Central Park, which allows for events, whether you're thinking about weddings, parties, that sort of thing, that again would draw people to, and also make the space usable beyond just the museum aspect of things or the research aspect of what we do. And then there's the plaza. I think many of you will remember the sculpture that we had there, All Power to All People, done by Hank Willis Thomas, but also the fact that this plaza, we've used it to do numerous community programs, whether it was on Africa Day, whether it's on Juneteenth, but again, activating this space, which can sometimes feel a bit empty. Once we are able to use that, maybe do some upgrades for security purposes, and then also for seating and everything, so that if we're screening a movie that's ready made, that people can come and just relax and be in that space. That's something that we're really interested in doing as well. So we're coming to you with to ask for your support. We're very grateful that you wrote for us a letter of support earlier, and we're very thankful for that. And we just want to say first and foremost that we're grateful to you for supporting the Africa Center as an institution over all of these years, and to let you know that we are seeking from the Manhattan Borough President and also from the City Council the sum total of $10 million to help jumpstart some of the construction that we're doing. And so the ask of you, as I said at the beginning, really is in the same way that Community Board was very kind to support us through a letter. We're asking for that again, but this more specifically to Councilmember Christian Richardson Jordan, stating support for this project, its presence in the community, and what we believe it can do for our corner of New York City, and of course, expanding, bringing people in and bringing Africa to the world and to New York City. So with that, I can stop and pause. Thank you very much for your time. And if there are any questions that you have, I'm here, ready, willing to take them.
Thank you so much, Uzo, for your presentation. I do have a question. Can you elaborate on the STEM incubator?
Sure. What we'd like to do, so with that is, we have a dual mission, as I said. One is providing a sense it's not just about presenting the content, but it's also bringing people into the continent, right? Into understandings of the continent. So we can think about how you educate people about present day problems and use that as a means of creating sort of curricula or experiences for people. And so when we say learning lab, right, or STEM lab, it's essentially a place where people can come in, some of the things that are facing the continent of African diaspora peoples, whether it's, again, climate, you can use those to develop lessons and then use those to develop programs for learning for younger folks. Again, if we talk about some of the kids who've come in most recently for, and gone through the exhibition that we currently have on display, States of Becoming, one of the really amazing things was to watch them take a look at some of the art that was created about what it means to be an immigrant in the United States, an African immigrant in the United States, and then do their own artwork as it relates to that. And so that's the kind of experiential learning that we're thinking that maker space or learning lab could actually be most useful for.
Thank you so much. Stephanie and then Jessica.
Hi, thank you so much for presenting. I just want to just make sure I have the figures right. So you're asking the city for how much?
So in this budget request, we're asking for 10 million in this current request from the city.
Got you. And then, so you've already met with Christine Richardson Jordan, and she said to reach out to us, right? So we can support. And the whole is the whole 10 million you're requesting from the council member?
So we're requesting it in two. One is from the borough president's office and the other is from the council. And then of course there's DCLA as well. So we met with DCLA chair, we met with council woman Jordan, and we're hoping to meet with other city officials, but for this request.
So may I add to that a little bit, just to jump in, if to answer your question, expound upon that. So yes, one of our first meetings this cycle was with council member Kristen Richardson Jordan. We felt as the Africa Center is in her district, and we're requesting capital that it was appropriate to begin with her and first solidify her support. She emphasized that she is pursuing community budget process this year, which will allow members of the community to weigh in on the capital projects that she supports. So she asked us to identify folks that could weigh in on our behalf, and so that's why we're here today. She holds the Community Board 11 obviously in high esteem, and so that's why we're asking for this letter of support. So just also to elaborate on the actual dollar amount. So yes, $5 million we're requesting from the borough president, and the other 5 from the city council. Now, within the city council, there are various tranches of money. So the Manhattan delegation, there is speaker initiative funding. And so we are going to be asking specifically the Manhattan delegation to support this capital request, and hopefully with the leadership and support of Kristen Richardson Jordan. And that deadline is February 23rd for organizations that are seeking capital funding from both the borough president as well as the city council. And yes, we do plan to meet with more members. We do have a meeting pending with the borough president. We will also meet eventually with the finance chair, and hopefully the staff who, the finance staff who make decisions about capital funding, various members of the budget negotiating team, but the real focus will be on the Manhattan delegation members. And we will also meet with council member Chi Osei, who is the chair of cultural affairs, and some members in the Black, Latino, Asian caucus. But your support is pivotal to this going through. And so we're so grateful for this opportunity. So I hope that helped with some of the details.
I just have 2 more questions. Only
Great.
because you've got the community budget process. Are you sure that's not, we're not talking about the participatory budget process, right?
No, that's the interesting thing. Stephanie, I know the difference, but she did not refer to it as the participatory budget process. She did not, she said she'd be looking toward her community. She didn't honestly give us a lot of detail about that, but did emphasize that it needed some help validating the project.
Understood. And then my last question is, so is our support letter just going to Christine Richardson Jordan, or is it also going to the borough president?
So I think to the local council member as well as the borough president.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you.
Jessica?
Thank you, Giselle, and thank you, Violet and Uzod, for continuing to engage us with the incredible institutional development work that you are doing for the Africa Center. It's incredible how intentional and specific you are about the capacity building exercise of continuing to further engage your mission and the content therein. So my question, just to clarify, this pot of capital, which is not insignificant, for essentially what I understand is an $85 million capital campaign. Ultimately, the 10 million is intended, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is intended to be a seed to start the push to continue to build towards achieving that capital campaign, or is, maybe it's an and, is this initial $10 million intended to actually execute on some of the projects you outlined in the presentation? If you can clarify, I think that sort of helps in understanding what we would be supporting through our letters, besides a dollar amount ask, but from the project delivery and institutional development framework of what you're trying to achieve, which I think
Well,
is fabulous and excellent. And
thank you very much, Jessica, and thank you for the kind words about the center. And so, I'll answer your question by saying it is an and. What we're hoping to do is, with the support of the city and also the support of outside resources, raise that full 85 million to complete the building. And I think you mentioned something earlier, which I think is really important. What we've been trying to do is do this prudently, right? So first operate and understand how to operate within that building by building smaller spaces, so that you're not just building in the hopes that people will come, but you understand how to build for people to come. Right, and you understand how to build a building that's essentially purpose-built for multiple things. One is for use by the community, for the ability to showcase, who we are as Africans and diaspora people, and then also for the ability to platform a certain set of ideas. And those ideas are across the creative spaces, the policy spaces, and the business spaces. And so, by bringing that capital from the city with capital from private donors and other sources, foundations and whatnot, we hope that over the last 5 years, we've been able to show just that we are taking seriously how you actually use a building, right? How you build a building, how you get people into that building, so that when we ask for that, 10 million, which is, as I agree with you, it's a not insignificant amount of money. And of course, we hope that there'll be the ability to ask for more at later dates, right? It's that we're showing that we are very prudent managers of city funds, right? Of all of your funds, of all of our taxpayer money that's going into this, right? Of course, stewards, and have the ability to create a vibrant environment that uses that money for the benefit of who we are as a community.
And then I might just follow on, in addition to my role as a resident and community member in East Harlem, just 2 points. I think the frame of cultural exchange through fashion, and I mean that in the sort of the deepest sense of expression, that I think is so powerful, is something that I have experienced, here and locally, and in powerful ways, and I think that's a frame of understanding and expression that has so much vitality, both from a kind of an economic, but also a kind of a creative and a historical transfer of culture and person and place. And then second, I think with regard to the work that the Africa Center is doing on climate, I also, with another hat, I'm an architect and co-chair the Planning and Urban Design Committee with AIA New York. We do some global and local connections, and work with partners who work through the UN. And so perhaps connecting with you at some point to understand how we can amplify your narrative, and perhaps collaborate in bringing traffic your way, but also sharing the project that you have ongoing in building cultural capacity around a building, but for a very specific place-based purpose. So thank you, and I hope we are able to move forward in supporting your effort here tonight.
Thank you very much, Jessica. And I can't add anything to what you said because it's exactly what we're trying to do as an institution. And your support in being able to do that would be absolutely, it would mean the world to us.
Thank you so much, Stephanie and Jessica, for your questions. Thank you again for your presentation. If I don't see any other questions, would somebody like to make a motion to support for a letter of support for the 10 million that the Africa Center is asking for? Okay, Stephanie and Jessica, is your hand still raised for that?
No, I think we were both.
Okay, so first and second. Go ahead, Stephanie.
I'd like to make a motion to for the committee to offer a letter of support for the Africa Center to both Council Member Kristen Jordan, pardon me, and Borough President Mark Levine for their request for $5 million from each elected official.
I second that.
Okay, Angel, can you do a roll call?
Committee members, I'm going to call your name. Please answer with your vote. Stephanie Arroyo.
Yes.
Dan Breha.
Yes.
Devin Cronshaw.
Yes.
Jewel Jones.
Yes.
Marissa Mack. Giselle Malave.
Yes.
Jennifer Meyer.
Yes.
Jessica Morris.
Yes.
Eugene Rodriguez.
Yes.
Vinnie Torres.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you again for presenting.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will be moving on. I see in the chat that Francis would like to make a comment on the branch communications if possible. Go ahead, Francis.
Yeah, thank you, Giselle. So I just wanted to make sure I loop back about communications, especially during emergencies. Patrons have the option to subscribe to alerts on their NYPL account. They can choose their neighborhood branch. In the case of the Aguilar closure, when we had a pump circulating break, so it was an emergency situation where we had to move the collections as swiftly as possible. The patrons were sent out an alert in November, but signage, there was a lag in signage, so we do acknowledge that, but we took some time for us to update where holds would be moving. But just as an FYI, patrons receive email communications if they're signed up for alerts. So again, just want to reiterate that patrons, anyone can sign up for their neighborhood branch alerts through their NYPL account. And thank you so much, Jessica, for bringing that up.
Thank you, Francis.
Thank you, Francis. Thank you for being a good neighbor and explaining that to us. Thank you. Okay, so we will move on to our committee discussion on Mayor's fiscal year 2024 preliminary budget. Thank you, everyone, for presenting tonight. We'll move on to our committee discussion. Thank you. Okay. So I'm assuming that everybody got a chance to look at the email that Angel sent out with all of the information for the statement of our statement, the responses that we received from each agency. I'd like to have a discussion and see, take a look at the responses and see how we would like to proceed as a committee. Any questions, any comments, any feedback? So yes, so I'll open it up that this is a committee discussion, so we don't, we can just kind of unmute yourselves if you want to. Angel, if you can bring up on the screen something that can just, we can reference to start the discussion. I guess you can bring up the requests.
Give me a second, I'll look for something.
Sure, thank you. Okay. So priority 14 is the one that we have up on the screen now. Everyone can see the response, which was further study by agency of this request is needed. And, I'd like to hear from you guys what, are you guys okay with this response? Do we want to respond? What are your thoughts? This is the project that I believe Eva Chan introduced last year with making, helping revitalize 125th Street, making it into like more of like a transit hub. This is a capital request, right, Angel?
Yes, the first two, so the committee had 8 requests altogether. The first 2 are capital requests, so capital request 14 and capital request 15. They just
15 with the same.
follows it. And then you have 6 expense ones here further down.
Okay. We also have 15 on the screen, guys. It says to contact the community board.
Giselle, general point of question.
Go ahead.
So I guess, and it's good that Stephanie is a member of the committee and here to maybe offer some insight. I think generally in my review, and I did read specifically for EcoDev because I knew we were going to convene this evening. But I think generally the 2 responses that we're seeing here for our 2 asks in priority 14 and priority 15, further study by the agency of this request is needed, and contact the community board unit at OMB for further for information regarding this request. Those are very common responses, and I'm not sure, ultimately, are we looking to develop a response to those responses, or are we trying to strategize how to improve our ask so that we get a more conclusive response? At this point in the process, it would help, I think, to clarify if we're, what it is we're trying to, I guess, to just outline.
That's a great question, Jessica. I think we're doing a little bit of both. I think we're doing both. It would be good to do both if we can. I mean, that's our explanation, that's their response, and we're gonna kind of keep on going around in a circle if
And just Giselle, maybe the follow-up question is, when does the consultation happen? Did it already happen, or does it happen after this point? Because I think those are critical steps in the process. We get a response at some point, and then there's a sit down with agency representatives to kind of try to move the needle on some of the sticky ask points, right?
So now the consultations, I believe, happened during the summer, correct, Angel? I believe
Yes, I do. Sorry, I was drinking water.
No, it's
Yes.
okay. It's fine. The consultations happened during the summer, so, you know, this is the response point. We just have to pretty much look at our responses and see how we want to respond. I believe there is room for conversation now to see if we can narrow down, if maybe what we're asking seems vague, and that's pretty much what this. I mean, if you want to suggest, are you suggesting that we change, like maybe perhaps the ask, or make it more specific? Do you have like some type of a language that you want to change, or maybe omit something or change it?
My understanding is that the fall is really when we hone our requests and our explanation, and that now we're going to bat if there's anything fuzzy about it. I would be curious, when the agency responds with the further study by the agency of this request is needed, what does that mean? And what actually then happens at that point with regard to our asking for dollars to support, a specific thing? Is there a feedback loop, or is it a catch-all for, yeah, you're asking for this, we can't allocate money to it, so we'll say we need to study it more?
I mean, if you remember from last year, it's kind of like the same cycle all over again. We're gonna start entering consultations in the summer, but now we kind of have to build towards that. So they answered based on what we asked, and we will have an opportunity to meet with them in the near future. I believe this meeting right now is to discuss as a committee and see how we want to respond to their response. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Angel, can we make some type of a change if needed, or should we just discuss that and then maybe down the line when it is allowed, that's when we can make the change to whatever language or,
Right, so the requests themselves can't be changed now. That's later. Jessica said that correctly. At this point, what we're like, reviewing your specific budget requests is helpful. And if there are instances where you wanted to add something in the response that goes to the mayor, highlighting that particular request and the importance of that particular request, that's secondary. What you're working towards is actually is preparing a response that goes to that is pointed at the specific agency. So for example, in this case, in the case of your committee, a couple of agencies, right? So EDC, SBS, Cultural Affairs, the Public Library. The mayor's issued what his priorities are in this budget, and I'm going to make something up, right? Because typically when the city is on hard fiscal times, the first thing they do is cut the library for the funding for the library, right? So you would, craft some kind of comment about that, about the importance of public libraries, more specifically in your district. You would speak to, for example, the closure and the impact of the closure for these capital projects on our, constituents. And then you would highlight, we requested the following in support of the New York Public Library, and we maintain that this is important for whatever reason, right? So like that's what this discussion should be informing. It should not be a discussion about thinking of reformatting this or that request. That comes later. They're not going to review that. But if we're saying, look, this is of the utmost importance in your preliminary budget proposal, you identified cuts that will impact, this agency, and that will be felt in our district in these and that way. That's what we're trying to say. Right.
Okay, that's pretty straightforward. So is there anything that we feel we should, you know, kind of readdress or emphasize on? We have 14, 15, which 15 is the redevelopment of the Marqueta that we suggested. 14 is the 125th Transit Hub. 30 is expanding programs in emergency and legacy industries such as fashion, film, food, manufacturing. That's for, those three are for EDC. Then we have the SPS, 219 and 36. 2 is to provide, expand occupational skills training programs. Do we want to talk about jobs? Do we want to, 19 is support local CBOs to improve public spaces through management, maintenance, programming.
I'd just like to suggest, I don't know which number it is, and Giselle, maybe you're you're more keyed into it, but I think Angel brings up a really great point that some of the first cuts are with those softer points of service related to libraries, and where there is a vulnerable point with renovation pending. If you're dealing with budget cuts and renovation, it makes incredible challenge. So if we're able to advocate for that funding to remain at existing levels, I think that would be a very valuable statement to make. I'm not sure what priority number it corresponds to, but I do recall
Yes,
seeing it in
it's 26. And we pretty much asked to library extend hours and programs. So we will elaborate on the funding that needs to remain for libraries as he's evaluating his cuts. Then we have Department of Cultural Affairs asked. We have one, which is number 20 in priority. And it was to bring attention to the local, their response was to bring it to the attention of the local elected officials, and that was the revitalization of the arts. I believe we also introduced like the theater idea that Eugene had. I don't know if, is Eugene here? Eugene, hi Eugene.
Can I just say, are you recognizing hands? My hand is up. Just asking.
Jewel, I didn't see you. I see you now. Go ahead, Jewel.
I'm going back to what the point that Jessica made. She made several excellent points, but the point about going back to the first item there, where it said, you know, go back to that agency. So I don't know if it was answered, but she asked about those communications at the table when EDC or some entity is saying, okay, we see your request, we see your explanation, this is our response. So I want to know you know, if what the response, the specific response is in terms of what they said about these things. And going back to the first one, what was it, EDC? I don't remember the agency. And I heard what everybody said so far, but I don't know if that was answered, because, you know, I'm not at the table. I don't know what they're saying. So I think our explanation, our request is pretty on point. So what are they saying specifically in terms of, if we're going back to them, what, you know, I would like to hear what they said and have a response to that. Is anyone able to respond to my specific question? Do you understand my specific question?
I do. Angel I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that question, but from my understanding, Jewel, it's like, okay, do we just go back? This is the answer that they're giving us, or this is the response. Should we, or how do we respond? Is that your question? Like, how should we respond?
I'm simply asking, what specifically did they say? And like, somebody's in the room, somebody's taking notes, there's minutes. I'm that literal. Like, what exactly are they saying?
So their response was further study by.
I see that. I see that.
So that's their response.
Okay, there's nothing beyond that. So you're sitting in a room, your EDC is there, there's communication, there's discussion. I'm being very literal here. Like, what are they saying?
So
So,
they presented last month.
but that's okay. We can move on.
Well, Jewel, I think
No,
that
that's
was
a
my
valid
question too.
I
Yeah.
know. That was, I get. I'm going to be very literal about this. That was a question, and you know, if it can't be answered, that's fine, because
But
I'm not at the table. I don't know who's there in the summer, who's sitting there with EDC. I'm
think
not there. Yeah.
It's a really good question. And so if their answer, our ask was about investing in infrastructure to support growth in commercial business districts. Their answer was, we need to study that. And what I think, I hear you agreeing with me that we perhaps should say, okay, you need to study it, but what exactly are you studying?
Yeah, so that's it. So yeah,
What do you
that's
need
it.
to know? You know,
Yeah, that's it.
perhaps we can help you understand, you know. So I think that's the,
We can move on, Bill. We can move on. Thank you, though.
right. Well, and I know that that's a common response from agencies, is further study by the agency of this request is needed. So, you know, to figure out how we can crack that nut, because we're asking for something and they're not saying that's a bad ask or no, we don't have money for that. They're saying, interesting. And then that's it. And we're not asking back of, how are you going to better understand this ask? What are you going to study? I think it's been the parking permit question for, you know, in a different committee for, you know, for a number of asks. How do we crack this nut of, one, agency response, further study by the agency of this request is needed, and the other common response, contact the community board unit at OMB for information regarding the request. And the first one, you know, is anything said in the consultation with regard to asking about what are you going to study to better understand our ask, period, is kind of our rebuttal. And then, yeah, and then, and if they say, we don't know, or what would you like us to study? Well, then it's a conversation and not a hard no or a hard no. It's an acknowledgement of an ask in a more productive way than further study is needed. That's a great acknowledgement, but it doesn't help us. It doesn't ensure that that action is being taken by the agency to get to a determination of whether they can allocate dollars to what we're asking for, right?
So two things, and that's a very good point. I look at the explanation and we see, okay, revitalize 125th Street Transit Hub, but we also include commercial retail space, performance space, affordable housing. I mean, that when you look at it, that agency alone cannot really, you know, they can't really, it's not really much they can do alone. This is like housing, retail space, performance space, MTA, DOT, you know, so maybe perhaps we can sort of, I would say, narrow down a little bit the explanation at another time. Another thing is too, I remember, I think last month, Francisco Ortiz, he was from EDC and he presented last month. And he went over every single of our budget requests. So he pretty much addressed each one. I know that he touched up on 125th Street. Off the top of my head right now, I don't know exactly what he said pertaining to this request, but it is on the recording. So if you want any more clarification on what he said in his presentation, you could go back to it. Jessica, you're saying that we should address this agency, particularly EDC, by asking them like, what kind of study are you looking for? Is that what you're saying?
With regard to this, yes, the you know, the response to the response would be, what are you looking at here to better understand this ask? They do have a lot of things in the works. And I respect that there are consistent updates. And I think this response acknowledges that there's something here for them to try to understand and potentially allocate resources to. But for us to express continued interest in their investigations as an agency, that shows that we do really care, and this is a point of interest that we want them to continue to allocate their people power to find out then if there are larger points of investment that can be made or that do make sense across that CBD of town.
Okay, so we'll ask them to elaborate. What study exactly do they need? What elaboration do they need, or what study do they need for them to begin to start to dismantle this this request? Does anybody else have any other comments so we can move on from 14?
Eugene has his hand up, Giselle.
Okay, Eugene, go ahead.
Thank you, Giselle. This seems to be a stock answer from them for when they're going to put something to the side. We should have a stock answer responding to them along the lines, and maybe Jessica can further refine it, but something along the lines is great. We want to participate in your study, and we'd also like to know when we're going to start this study to begin.
Okay. So asking them that we want to be a part of the study that's needed for this request.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Something like, and I'm happy to try to, I can't write well while we're convened, but something like, you know, the community board would, you know, welcome the opportunity to engage further with the agency in determining what points of information are required to support this funding request. That's essentially what study is asking for. They're like, what do we need to know to be able to say yes or no? And if they don't know what they need to know, we need to help them understand what they need to know. So it's probably a single sentence, Eugene, that you're right, can articulate. We want to help them understand what they need to know to get to a yes or get to a no, so that we can have a more productive conversation.
We're good people. We want to participate. Come on.
Okay, so we've moved on from 14.
So
Let's take a look at, yes, go ahead. Adrian.
if I could, because this has the it's looking like it's going to be torturous. This is not what the exercise is. I'm sorry. The exercise is to respond to the mayor as to his budget priorities. It's not to go item by item and figure out how to respond to something that that you requested. The contact information for each agency is at the beginning of that budget register. If you have questions, if you need clarification on their particular answers, what you need to do is contact them and speak directly to them. You can do that now. You should do that now. And you can do that at any point along the process. This is not the time to reconfigure a budget request or to go tit for tat on what they answered. You can speak to them, but in the response that we're sending to the mayor, it's a different thing. And we have done this before, respectfully. We know how to do this. That's what we need to do. I'm suggesting to you, Giselle, that that folks forward to you suggestions for inclusion in the response to the mayor. They should be targeted to each agency. The District Needs and Budget Committee is meeting this Thursday to finalize the draft response. I can resend again last year's budget response. You have a model of what it's supposed to look like, but an item by item breakdown of every one of these requests and saying we need more clarity. It's not the audience. The mayor could care less about that back and forth. The mayor wants to know, or supposedly, what you think about his budget priorities, right? Not whether or not an agency gave a clear answer. We all know that the agencies just click, you know, from a menu of 5 or 6 options when responding to these things. Our task is then to engage them, to take them up on it and say, contact the, let's say the community board unit at OMB, then that's exactly what we should be doing. And our committee should be doing that, reaching out, making these, you know, these connections now and at the executive, at the adopted, and then again at the budget consultations in the summer. And to answer a question that was asked before, you all know this as well. The budget consultations are set up in consultation with the staff and the respective chairs of each committee. And then the chairs can invite members of their committee if they so choose. And the conversation is with each one of those agencies. Those agencies that are, you know, confirm a consultation meeting with us, then we have that conversation. Our experience has been that it has been a struggle to get agencies to show up and equally a struggle to get leadership of our committees to show up, much less members of those committees. But that's a conversation for this summer. But I did want to clarify that for those that needed further clarification. We've done this many times.
Okay, so all we're looking at is the response. And we have to address the mayor, like Angel said. Anything that we want to emphasize or elaborate on. The responses are what the responses are. We can't, you know, change anything right now. So let's look at the responses. I took a look at all the responses. If you guys have any comments so that we can, you know, elaborate. I know that Jessica mentioned to the library, so we will elaborate on the library funding to make sure that when the mayor is looking at, you know, his cuts or you know, whatever it is that he's doing with the budget, he takes into consideration that CB11 is our committee is looking to make sure that we always have those library funds intact. Is there any other emphasis that this committee wants to give pertaining to our requests?
I'm showing a copy of last year's for those that want templates.
Sorry, just a point of clarification, and you know, Angel, I think you've got your head on straight when you do this because you have to make sure that we do it right. I think the frame of being productive and contributing through a committee based contribution that is not district needs and budget is challenging. So the most helpful document to look at to better understand is that the citywide set of line items. Clearly, it's, you know, the document that we were reviewing as a committee is about our asks. It's not about dollars allocated. So where, what is the best document to be able to effectively digest the quote priorities so that we can put into context our ask with regard to the overall frame of what is prioritized and what has potentially been left behind, which would be the things we would want to essentially make sure get mentioned in our response. Correct? Is that strategically what we're trying to do?
Mm-hmm. That's a fair question. And the answer is a lot of documents.
Sorry.
Right. So this is the fiscal plan. I'm sorry, I'm saying something that I'm not showing you. Give me a second. Apologize. So we link it on our website and we emailed the same thing to you all. So on our district needs and budget committee tab, I'll just walk folks through it. You go for fiscal year 24 and all the documents related to that are listed here. It's showing, right? So then there's the register, which we just had up a minute ago. And then there's a link to the city's preliminary budget documents, which are a cajillion. Summary helps as a starting point, and then you just start dipping in deeper and deeper and deeper, depending on your interest. But it's a ton of stuff. I'm not saying it's a ton of stuff to dissuade anyone. I'm just trying to be honest.
I'm sorry, Jessica. Today is the deadline, no, Angel?
What we wanted to do, I'll answer this way. What we asked the different, what the budget committee tasked the vice chairs for each committee to do is to come to their committees and guide the conversation. And hopefully get out of their respective committee meetings, their response, so it could be, could all be put together. And a draft could be reviewed at the District Needs Committee on Thursday in anticipation of the full board meeting on Tuesday. So the goal was to have it wrapped up tonight, but if that's not possible, I'm trying to torture anyone, including myself, y'all can hammer it out by tomorrow so that you can, type it up and, put it in, assemble it into a draft with a budget committee to review on Thursday. That would work. I'm waiting on youth to send me their stuff, so y'all wouldn't be, out of line with that. But waiting for Thursday is going to be tough. But if you get it to me tomorrow, here's my paragraph, 2 paragraphs, here's my 3 paragraphs, whatever, then that's fine.
Yep. So the intention is for me to draft it, and have the conversation now. If you guys want to email me, like Angel said, your comments so that I can include it into the statement, but I am drafting the statement after this meeting. Yeah, to send it to Angel.
And sorry, Giselle, just further point of clarification, how these documents, Angel, January 2023 financial plan and fiscal years 2023 to 2027, how those citywide points of information and detailed set of numbers and priorities relate to the register, which we were just looking at. It puts those register asks into some frame of context of allocated dollars for various agency-based activities. Is that correct?
I'm gonna say no, unless they are funding a request that we made. So like if we said we wanted X and X is being paid for in this budget, then yes, that would show. If they're not funding it, then it would not show, other than in the register itself.
And similar to, I think it was last year or the year before, there was a significant reduction in sanitation services dollar amounts. And that was something that we caught at this point in the process to then advocate for a sort of a fair share, more equal distribution. Is that correct?
That's a very good example. Yes.
Okay, so we're just doing a little bit of accountability legwork and cross-referencing our register-based asks to make sure that if there's something we really, are asking for, and it's an eliminated priority, we can say maybe that shouldn't be eliminated. That's kind of the 30,000 foot perspective of what we're doing now, right?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
That's really good. Yeah.
Thank you. Now that I understand what we're doing, it's not too late to do it. Thank you.
Okay, so besides the library and their budget, we have to cross-reference that to address it. Anything else? We have a few asks. The SBS requests, DCA and EBC. Okay, Angel, I think I'm just gonna wait for, everyone to send me their comments, and I'm gonna start working on this. I mean, if anyone else has, Jessica, your hand is still up. If you have a question.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, thank you. We can move on.
Sorry, Giselle, just last point of question while we're on it. I'm just seeing the 10-year capital strategy. And this is for a different different committee. But we should be confirming that, just reviewing what is funded essentially. And if we're making asks and they're not getting funded, this is the point where it's clear what is getting funded. Is that, okay, I'm gonna do my homework. Never
Yeah,
mind,
I
no
was gonna
question
say-
there. Thanks, Giselle.
I mean, if we would, obviously not everybody read the email, so and it's a lot of stuff, and I get it, I understand. But to have this conversation, yeah, we would need to all kind of be on the same page as to like, what got the numbers and all that other stuff. So to be able to have like a flowing conversation, but I think that at this point, it's like we should all just go to the email, check out, read, if possible, in its entirety, what Angel sent. Email me your comments, if possible, by tonight, tomorrow, because I need to get this to Angel by tomorrow. And I would like to send it to him by like 12:30, 1 o'clock. So I'll be on the lookout for your guys' email, and hopefully from there, I can piece it together. So next slide. Old business, any old business? No, okay. New business? No, okay. Angel, please do the roll call.
Sure. Members, when I call your name, please answer present. Stephanie,
Present.
Adem,
Here.
Devin,
Present.
Jewel,
Present.
Giselle,
Present.
Jennifer,
Present.
Jessica,
Here, thanks.
Eugene,
Present.
Vinny, Jenny. Oh no, Jenny's up. You have more.
Okay, thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.